You will not believe what happened to me. And if you think you've heard stories about HOA nightmares before, let me tell you, this one will keep you glued until the very last second. Because what I uncovered, what I endured, and how I ended it all was nothing short of shocking. Imagine buying your dream pine farm, acres of green stretching endlessly, the crisp scent of needles in the air, the promise of Christmas trees that would bring joy to families for years to come. And then imagine one woman, one self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, deciding that your dream was hers to exploit. That's where my story begins, and I swear to you, every word is true, every emotion I felt is carved into me like the rings of those trees she stole. I had always wanted land outside the suffocating rules of homeowners associations, those petty dictatorships where people like Karen thrive, where they measure your grass with rulers and fine you for leaving a trash bin out for an extra hour. So when I found the pine farm just beyond the HOA boundary, I thought I was safe. I thought I had escaped their claws. The farm was perfect. Rows upon rows of pines, each one a promise of holiday cheer, each one a symbol of independence. I poured my savings into it. I worked day and night, pruning, watering, nurturing. I envisioned families coming to pick their trees, children laughing, parents smiling, the smell of pine filling the air. It was more than a business, it was my sanctuary. But Karen, the HOA president, had other plans. She was notorious in the neighborhood, a woman whose smile was as fake as the wreath she hung on her door, whose eyes scanned every property like a hawk searching for prey. She thrived on control, on bending people to her will, and when she saw my farm, she saw opportunity. At first, it was subtle. She would stop by, pretending to admire the trees, asking questions about my plans, feigning interest. I thought she was just nosy, the way HOA people are. But then, one December morning, I walked out to the farm and found entire rows of trees missing, gone, vanished. My heart sank, my stomach twisted. I felt violated. I confronted Karen, and she didn't even bother to deny it. She smirked, that smug little smirk, and said, "Oh, those trees were just sitting there. People in the HOA needed them. I sold them for the community fund. You should be grateful." Grateful? She had stolen my property, sold it without my consent, pocketed the money under the guise of community? I was furious, but I knew better than to go to the authorities. Karen had connections, she had influence, and she thrived on dragging people through endless HOA hearings. Now, if I wanted justice, I had to take it myself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying her smirk in my mind, hearing her words echo like poison. My farm was my life, my dream, and she had turned it into her scam. I felt rage boiling inside me, but also a cold determination. If Karen thought she could steal from me, she had underestimated the wrong person. I decided then and there I would end her scam, not tomorrow, not next week, but overnight. I began watching her, studying her routines. Karen was predictable, like all tyrants. She strutted around the neighborhood, barking orders, writing fines, holding her little HOA meetings where she sat at the head of the table like a queen. She kept records, meticulous records, of every transaction, every fine, every sale. And she was greedy. She didn't just sell my trees, she sold other things too. Unauthorized community projects, inflated service fees, bogus landscaping charges. She was siphoning money from everyone, hiding behind the HOA's name. I knew I couldn't just expose her. She would spin it, twist it, make herself the victim. No, I had to destroy her scam from the inside, make it collapse so completely that she couldn't recover. I started small. I planted hidden cameras around my farm, catching her in the act when she came to inspect. I recorded her loading trees into trucks, handing them off to buyers. Each clip was a dagger, proof of her theft. But I didn't stop there. I infiltrated her meetings, posing as a concerned resident, listening, taking notes. I discovered her secret accounts, the way she funneled money through shell projects. The suspense grew each day. I felt like I was living a double life. By day, the quiet farmer tending his pines. By night, the shadow, watching, waiting, plotting. My emotions swung wildly. Anger when I saw her smug face, sorrow when I walked past the empty rows of stolen trees, exhilaration when I uncovered another piece of her scheme. I was consumed, but I didn't care. This was war, and I was going to win. Finally, the night came. I had everything I needed. I had the recordings, the documents, the evidence of her theft, but I didn't plan to hand it to the authorities. No, if I wanted justice, I had made Karen feel the sting of betrayal, the humiliation of being exposed by her own people. I crafted anonymous letters, each one containing damning evidence, and slipped them into the mailboxes of every HOA member. I hacked into the HOA's email system, blasting the recordings to every resident. I plastered flyers across the neighborhood detailing her scam in vivid detail. Overnight, her empire crumbled. The next morning, chaos erupted. Residents stormed her house demanding answers. Meetings turned into shouting matches. Karen tried to deny it, tried to spin it, but the evidence was undeniable. Her smirk was gone, replaced with panic. She was cornered, trapped, her scam laid bare for all to see. And I watched from the edge of my farm as her world collapsed. I didn't need the authorities. I didn't need lawyers. I had done it myself. But the story doesn't end there. Karen was vindictive, and even as her scam fell apart, she tried to claw back, to salvage her power. She accused me of sabotage, of framing me. She rallied her few loyal followers, trying to turn the tide. That's when I revealed the final blow. I had saved the most damning evidence for last. A recording of her bragging about stealing my trees, laughing about how easy it was, mocking me. I played it at the next meeting, her voice echoing through the room, dripping with arrogance. The room fell silent, then erupted in fury. She was finished. The suspense, the tension, the emotions, it all culminated in that moment. I felt a surge of triumph, not just because I had avenged my farm, but because I had done it on my terms. Karen was stripped of her power. Her scam ended overnight, her reputation shattered. My farm was safe, my dream restored. And as I walked through the rows of pines, the scent of victory mingling with the scent of needles, I knew I had won.
Karen's downfall should have been enough, but for me, it wasn't. I couldn't shake the image of those missing rows of trees, the hollow spaces where life had once stood tall. Every time I walked past them, I felt the sting of betrayal all over again. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about reputation. It was about the violation of something sacred. Those trees had been mine, nurtured by my hands, watered with my sweat, and she had ripped them away as if they were nothing. That wound demanded more than exposure. It demanded retribution. I began to notice how Karen moved differently after the collapse. She was paranoid now, glancing over her shoulder, whispering to her few remaining allies. She avoided the farm, avoided me, but I could feel her hatred simmering. She wanted revenge, but she was weakened, stripped of her power. That's when I realized the most fitting punishment wasn't just to expose her scam, it was to make her live in the ruins of her own empire, to watch her crumble piece by piece, knowing she couldn't stop it. So I devised a plan, one that would keep her guessing, keep her spiraling. I started with whispers. Anonymous notes slipped under her door, each one reminding her of the trees she stole, each one written in a tone that made her wonder if I was watching her every move. "The pines remember," one note said. "Every needle you stole will prick you back," said another. She grew restless, her curtains drawn, her lights flickering late into the night. I wanted her to feel the same sleepless torment she had inflicted on me. But I didn't stop there. I began to manipulate her world. I hacked into the HOA's remaining systems, sending out fake notices in her name, demanding absurd fines from residents. They turned on her even more, believing she was still trying to squeeze them dry. I redirected deliveries meant for her, rerouted her mail, made her life a maze of confusion. Every day she woke up to chaos, and every day I watched from the shadows, savoring the suspense. The emotions inside me were a storm. There were moments when I felt pity, when I wondered if I had gone too far, but then I would remember her smirk, her arrogance, her theft, and the pity would vanish, replaced by cold satisfaction. I wasn't just avenging myself. I was avenging every neighbor she had exploited, every family she had drained. I was the hand of justice, and I would not falter. One night, I decided to confront her directly, but not in the way she expected. I waited until the neighborhood was asleep, until the streets were silent. I crept to her yard, carrying one of the few trees she hadn't managed to steal, a small pine I had uprooted just for this purpose.
I planted it right in the middle of her lawn, a symbol, a reminder. When she woke the next morning, she found it there, standing tall, defiant. She screamed, tore at it, tried to remove it, but the roots were deep, the soil firm. The tree wouldn't budge, just like me. The suspense built as Karen's paranoia grew. She started accusing random neighbors of plotting against her, shouting at children for playing too close to her yard, barricading herself inside her house. The once powerful HOA queen was now a prisoner of her own fear, and I kept feeding it, little by little, until she was unraveling completely. But the climax was yet to come. I had saved the most devastating move for last, the one that would ensure she could never rise again. I had discovered her secret stash, a hidden account where she had funneled thousands from her scams. I drained it, not into my pocket, but into the community she had exploited. I anonymously paid off fines, funded repairs, covered costs for families she had burdened. The residents rejoiced, believing the HOA had finally turned benevolent, while Karen was left penniless, powerless, and exposed. The emotions that surged through me that night were indescribable. Triumph, relief, vengeance, all mingling into a single intoxicating wave. I had done it. I had ended her scam overnight, not with courts or police, but with my own hands, my own mind. Karen was finished, her empire reduced to ashes, her reputation shredded, and my farm, my sanctuary, stood untouched, stronger than ever. Yet even as I walked through the rows of pines, the needles brushing against my arms, the scent filling my lungs, I knew the story wasn't just about trees. It was about power, about resilience, about refusing to be a victim. Karen had tried to break me, but in the end, I had broken her. And as the wind whispered through the branches, I felt the farm itself acknowledging my victory, each tree a witness to the justice I had carved with my own hands. Karen's paranoia was only the beginning, but I wasn't finished. I wanted her to feel the same suffocating dread that had haunted me when I saw my farm stripped bare. Every missing tree had been a wound, and now it was time for her to bleed in silence, not physically, but emotionally, mentally, in the way that eats at your soul until you can't breathe. I began to orchestrate small, deliberate moves. Late at night, I would walk past her house, dragging pine branches across the pavement so the sound echoed like whispers. I left needles scattered on her porch, so when she opened her door in the morning, she would see fragments of the very trees she had stolen. I wanted her to feel hunted, to believe the farm itself was reclaiming what she had taken. Her neighbors started noticing her unraveling. She shouted at shadows, accused delivery men of spying, and even claimed the trees were cursing her. The once untouchable HOA queen was now the neighborhood spectacle, and I watched it all unfold with a cold satisfaction. But I knew I had to push further because Karen was stubborn, and stubborn tyrants cling to power even when it's slipping through their fingers. So I turned her own greed against her. I discovered she had been hoarding supplies, boxes of decorations, wreaths and ornaments, things she had skimmed from HOA budgets over the years. I'd leaked the information anonymously, and soon residents stormed her garage, demanding their share. She tried to fight them off, but the evidence was undeniable. Her fortress was breached, her secrets exposed. The suspense grew thicker each day. I could feel the tension in the air, like a storm building. Karen was cornered, but she still tried to lash out. She spread rumors about me, claiming I was unstable, dangerous. She even tried to rally a few loyalists to sabotage my farm. That's when I set the final trap. I staged a delivery, boxes marked Christmas Trees Fund left at her doorstep. Inside were fake invoices, fake receipts, all pointing to her as the mastermind of a massive fraud. When she opened them, she panicked. She thought someone had discovered even more of her schemes. She ran to her allies, begging for help, but when they saw the documents, they turned on her completely. She was isolated, abandoned, drowning in her own lies. The emotions inside me were a mix of fire and ice. I felt the burn of vengeance, the chill of satisfaction. I had taken everything from her without lifting a finger in violence, without calling the authorities. I had made her destroy herself. And as I stood among my pines, the wind rustling through the branches, I realized the farm had become more than land. It was my weapon, my ally, my silent army. Karen's downfall was complete, but I didn't stop watching. I wanted to see her fade, to witness the slow erosion of her pride. She stopped attending meetings, stopped walking the streets. Her house grew dark, her yard overgrown. The woman who once ruled with fines and threats was now a ghost, haunted by the very trees she had stolen. And I, the quiet farmer, the man she thought she could exploit, had ended her scam overnight, not with police, not with lawyers, but with patience, cunning, and the relentless whisper of pine needles in the wind.
Karen's silence was deceptive, and I knew better than to think she had surrendered completely. People like her don't give up. They wait, they plot, they cling to scraps of power, even when the empire is fallen. That's why I kept pressing, because suspense isn't just about the climax, it's about the slow tightening of the rope, the gradual suffocation of arrogance until there's nothing left but fear. I began to weave myself deeper into her world without her realizing it. I intercepted her HOA correspondence, slipping in subtle changes that made her look incompetent. Notices went out with wrong dates, fines were miscalculated, meetings were scheduled at impossible times. Residents grew angrier, more frustrated, and every mistake was traced back to her. She tried to defend herself, but the evidence was always there, printed in black and white. She was losing credibility, and I was the invisible hand guiding her downfall. At night, I would walk the farm, the moonlight casting shadows across the rows of pines. Each tree seemed to whisper encouragement, each branch a reminder of why I was fighting. The emotions inside me were raw, rage, sorrow, determination, but they sharpened me, kept me focused. I wasn't just dismantling Karen's scam, I was reclaiming my dignity, my independence, my farm. Karen's paranoia reached new heights. She installed cameras around her house, motion lights that flickered on and off, alarms that blared at random. But none of it mattered, because the real battle was inside her mind. She couldn't sleep, couldn't trust anyone, couldn't escape the feeling that the farm itself was haunting her. And in a way, it was. I made sure of it. I left pine cones on her doorstep, arranged in patterns that spelled out words only she would understand. Thief, liar, scam. Each morning she found them. Each morning her fear grew. She tried to catch me, but I was always one step ahead, always watching from the shadows. The suspense was intoxicating, the tension electric. Then came the final act. I had discovered her last secret, a hidden storage unit filled with stolen goods, decorations, supplies, even cash. It was her safety net, her last refuge. I broke in, not to steal, but to expose. I scattered the contents across the neighborhood, leaving boxes on porches, ornaments hanging from trees, cash slipped into mailboxes. The residents awoke to find gifts, restitution for years of exploitation. And when they traced it back, when they realized it all came from Karen's hoard, her fate was sealed. The emotions that surged through me were overwhelming. Triumph, yes, but also a strange calm, a sense of closure. I had ended her scam overnight, not with violence, not with authorities, but with patience, cunning, and the relentless whisper of pine needles in the wind. Karen was finished, her empire reduced to ashes, her reputation shredded. And as I stood among my pines, the scent filling my lungs, the branches swaying gently, I knew the farm had been restored. It wasn't just land anymore, it was a symbol, a testament to resilience, to the power of standing up against tyranny. Karen had tried to break me, but in the end, I had broken her. Karen's collapse was almost complete, but I knew the true ending had to be more than just her humiliation. It had to be the slow burn of her realizing she had no way back, no path to reclaim what she had lost. I wanted her downfall to echo, to linger, to haunt her every time she looked at the neighborhood she once ruled. The farm became my fortress, my vantage point. I would walk the rows at dusk, the fading light painting the needles gold, and I would think about everything she had taken from me.
The missing trees were scars, but scars tell stories, and mine told of betrayal and revenge. Each night I replayed the journey, her smirk, her theft, my sleepless rage, the plotting, the whispers, the traps, and now the silence. Karen's house was dark, her yard neglected, her voice absent from the streets. The queen had been dethroned, and I had done it without a single authority lifting a finger. But I wanted the final act to be unforgettable. I waited until Christmas Eve, the night when families gathered, when the scent of pine filled homes, when joy was at its peak. I decorated my farm with lights, strings of gold and silver weaving through the branches, illuminating the rows of trees that remained. I invited families, neighbors, children. They came, laughing, smiling, choosing their trees, celebrating. And as they did, I made sure Karen could see it all from her window. The glow of my farm lit up the night, a beacon of everything she had tried to steal. She stood there, watching, powerless. The scam was over, the money gone, the respect shattered. And in that moment, she understood. I had ended her scheme and replaced it with something pure, something untouchable. My farm was thriving, my dream alive, and she was nothing. The emotions surged through me, triumph, relief, vindication. I had carried the suspense to its breaking point, stretched it until it snapped, and now the victory was mine. Karen's reign was finished, her scam ended overnight, her legacy destroyed, and I had done it all myself, with patience, cunning, and the relentless whisper of pine needles in the wind. As the families left, carrying their trees, their laughter echoing across the fields, I stood alone among the pines. The farm was quiet again, the lights twinkling softly, the air crisp. I breathed deeply, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. The battle was over, the farm was safe, and Karen was nothing. That was the final act, the closing chapter. My revenge was complete, my story told. And as I looked out across the endless rows of pines, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never forget the night her scam ended, the night the farmer she underestimated turned the tables, the night the whisper of needles became the roar of justice.